Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. Story 1. The Shadow Outside the Window. In 2018, a bitter winter gripped the small town of Silent Creek, Pennsylvania. Sarah, a middle-aged woman living alone in an old wooden house at the end of the road, was sitting by the living room window. The dim yellow light from the table lamp illuminated her slightly pale face. Outside, the night was as black as ink, with only a few snowflakes fluttering down. Sarah took a sip of hot tea, her eyes occasionally glancing outside. The wind whistled through the cracks in the window frames, creating eerie sounds. Suddenly, she froze. At the end of the garden, right by the wooden fence, she saw a figure standing motionless. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. The figure was tall, completely silent, and seemed to be staring directly at her house. It must be someone who got lost, she told herself, trying to reassure herself. But there was something about the figure's stillness and absolute silence that made her feel deeply uneasy. She stood up and gently pulled the living room curtains slightly to get a better look. The figure was still there, unmoving. Sarah tried to make out its face, but the darkness was too thick. She felt a cold shiver run down her spine. I have to call the police. The thought flashed through her mind. Sarah quickly reached for the landline phone on the coffee table. Just as she was about to pick up the receiver, a loud bang came from the back door. She startled, dropping the phone. The sound was like someone trying to pry open the door. Sarah's face turned white. She slowly turned around, her eyes fixed on the dark back door. The darkness seemed to thicken, engulfing everything. She held her breath and listened, but all she could hear was the whistling wind and the frantic beating of her heart. A faint creaking sound echoed, and then the back door slowly opened. A tall, dark figure dimly appeared in the doorway. Sarah screamed in terror, backing up against the wall. The dark figure stepped inside, slowly and heavily. Sarah tried to run, but her legs seemed to have frozen in place. The dark figure approached, becoming clearer and clearer. In the dim light from the living room, Sarah was horrified to realize it wasn't a person. The shape was tall, deformed, with eyes that glowed red like hot coals. A nauseating stench filled the air, hitting Sarah's nostrils. The creature let out a terrifying hiss and lunged towards her. Sarah screamed again, trying to dodge, but it was no use. The creature grabbed her arm with a cold, clawed hand. She felt a sharp, bone-chilling pain. "Let go of me, please," she screamed, but the creature only tightened its grip. In a panic, Sarah grabbed the nearby table lamp and smashed it hard against the creature's head. It staggered back slightly, then growled furiously. Sarah seized the opportunity, struggling free and running as fast as she could towards the front door. She flung open the door and burst out into the freezing night. The snow was falling heavier now, covering everything. Sarah ran relentlessly, not daring to look back. She could hear heavy footsteps chasing behind, along with a hissing sound that was getting closer. Sarah tripped on the path, her knee hitting the ground hard. A sharp pain shot up her leg, but she didn't dare stop. She tried to get up, but the creature had caught up to her. It grabbed her hair and pulled her backward. Sarah desperately fought back, scratching and kicking, but her strength was no match for the creature's. It lifted her up easily, as if she were just a doll. Sarah looked straight into its glowing red eyes, feeling death drawing near. Suddenly, a gunshot shattered the silent night. The creature hissed in pain and dropped Sarah. She fell onto the cold snow, gasping for breath. From the distance, a police car was speeding towards them, its blue and red lights flashing. The police found Sarah in a state of shock and injured. They found no trace of the strange creature. The incident remains an unsolved mystery to this day, and the residents of Silent Creek are still haunted by what might have happened on that cold winter night. Sarah later moved away, but the terrifying memory of the shadow outside the window always stayed with her. Story 2. Haunting from the Window Frame. October night in 2021. In a quiet residential area of Denver, Colorado, Emily, a 24-year-old recent college graduate, was sitting in an armchair by the living room window. Outside, darkness enveloped everything, with only the faint yellow light from the street lamp shining through the window frame. Emily was scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing outside, enjoying the tranquility of the late night. Suddenly, Emily froze. Across the street, under the dim streetlight, she saw a black car parked silently. The strange thing was that the car had been there for a long time. Perhaps even an hour. She didn't recognize the car, and it didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. Emily felt a slight unease. She looked more closely at the car. The windows were all dark, making it impossible to see inside. She told herself it was probably just someone waiting for a relative or friend. But the feeling of worry lingered. She stood up and gently moved closer to the window. She slightly parted the curtains to observe. The car was still parked there, with no signs of anyone inside. Suddenly, one of the car's headlights flickered once and then went off. Emily's heart beat faster. She quickly backed away, feeling like someone was watching her. She looked around the room, but there was only darkness and silence. She tried to reassure herself that she was imagining things, but the flickering headlight from before made her unable to feel at ease. Emily decided to call her boyfriend, David. She picked up her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed his number. Just as she brought the phone to her ear, a soft sound came from the back door. She startled, almost dropping her phone. She slowly turned around, listening. The sound was like someone lightly scratching at the door. Emily felt a cold fear spread throughout her body. She was certain that something was wrong. The scratching at the door became clearer, accompanied by a faint whisper, as if someone was calling her name. Emily stood frozen, not daring to breathe heavily. She felt an evil presence very close by, right outside the door, and it was trying to get inside. The whisper calling Emily's name grew louder, becoming distorted and terrifying. She backed away slowly, her eyes fixed on the back door. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, as if someone was trying to break it down. Emily screamed in terror, running as fast as she could towards the front door. She tried to unlock the door, but her hands were trembling so much that she couldn't get a good grip on the key. Finally, she managed to turn the lock and burst out of the house. She ran across the lawn, heading towards her neighbor's house. Behind her, she heard the sound of the back door being smashed open, followed by heavy footsteps chasing after her. Emily knew she didn't have much time. As she got closer to her neighbor's house, she turned her head to look back. In the dim moonlight, she saw a tall, dark figure chasing her. The shape didn't look like a normal person. It moved too fast and seemed to be floating above the ground. Emily tripped and fell to the ground. She tried to get up, but the figure had already caught up to her. It bent down, its face obscured by darkness. But Emily felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. An ice-cold hand gripped Emily's ankle and pulled her back forcefully. She screamed, trying to hold onto the grass, but it was no use. She was dragged across the ground, towards her dark house. As she was pulled closer to the house, Emily saw the black car still parked silently across the street. This time, she could see more clearly. In the driver's seat, a figure was sitting, facing her, although she couldn't see its face. Emily could feel a sinister smile spreading across its lips. Emily was dragged back into the house, the door slamming shut. Her scream was cut short. The next morning, the police found the house empty. Emily had vanished without a trace. The black car was also gone. The incident remains an unsolved mystery, and the residents of that neighborhood never felt safe looking out their windows at night again. Story 3. The Ghost Behind the Curtains. On an autumn night in 1998, at a remote farmhouse in rural Iowa, Eleanor, a woman in her early 70s with snow-white hair, was sitting in an old armchair by the fireplace. The clicking of knitting needles filled the warm space at a steady rhythm. Her twin grandsons, Tommy and Timmy, about 8 years old, were playing with building blocks on the rug in front of her. Occasionally, their giggles echoed, breaking the silence of the late night. Eleanor smiled kindly as she watched her grandchildren play. She felt happy and peaceful with them by her side. Suddenly, Tommy pointed towards the living room window and asked, "Grandma, what's that dark thing outside?" Eleanor squinted, following the direction of his finger. Outside, the night was pitch black, with only the faint moonlight illuminating the gaunt trees. "Those are just the shadows of the trees, dear," Eleanor replied gently, but a slight worry stirred within her. She felt there was something different about the darkness out there, a cold and unusual sensation. She continued knitting, trying not to dwell on it. A little while later, Eleanor looked up and glanced out the window again. This time, she saw it more clearly. Among the shadows of the trees, there was a strange figure, tall and gaunt, standing motionless. The figure was completely still, not moving at all, but it emanated an indescribable sense of dread. "I must be seeing things," she told herself, but her eyes remained fixed on the window frame. Tommy and Timmy were still engrossed in their play, completely unaware of the change in their grandmother's face. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the porch. It sounded like someone walking very lightly, but it was enough to startle Eleanor. She held her breath and listened, the clicking of her knitting needles stopping. "You boys play nicely. Grandma's just going to check something outside," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice calm. She gently stood up and walked towards the front door. Just as she placed her hand on the doorknob, a light scratching sound came from the living room window, the same window where she had seen the strange figure. Eleanor froze, her heart pounding. The scratching sound repeated, this time clearer and more insistent. Tommy and Timmy also stopped playing, looking at her with curiosity. "Grandma, what's that strange noise?" Timmy asked, his voice slightly scared. Eleanor tried to offer her grandsons a reassuring smile, but a terrifying dread was rising within her. She slowly turned her head, her eyes fixed on the living room window. Behind the thin curtains, she saw a shadowy figure moving. The shadow didn't have a clear shape, but it exuded an intense hatred and anger. Eleanor knew that whatever was outside was not just a shadow of a tree, and it wanted to come inside. The shadow behind the curtains began to move more violently, its long, spindly fingers seeming to try and tear through the thin fabric. Tommy and Timmy hugged their grandmother tightly, their eyes wide with fear. "Grandma, I'm so scared," Tommy sobbed. Eleanor held her two grandsons close, trying to shield them. "It's all right, dears. Grandma's here," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. She tried to stand up, but her legs seemed to have frozen in place. The scratching at the window grew more ferocious, accompanied by eerie hissing sounds, as if a hungry animal was trying to tear everything apart. In a moment of panic, Eleanor remembered the landline phone in the living room. She tried to crawl towards the table, holding her 2 grandsons tightly. As soon as she reached the phone, she quickly picked up the receiver and dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she spoke into the phone. "Please help me. There's something trying to break into my house. At the farmhouse on Willow Creek Road. Number 47. Please, hurry." Loud noises from the back door drowned out the voice of the operator. But Eleanor managed to shout her address before the line went dead. Suddenly, the window rattled violently, and one of the panes of glass shattered. A bony, clawed hand reached inside, trying to grab Tommy, who was sitting closest to the window. Eleanor screamed in terror, pushing Tommy away forcefully. She quickly pulled her 2 grandsons behind the fireplace, where it seemed safer. She looked around the room, searching for anything she could use as a weapon. Her eyes landed on the walking stick she usually used for support. The sound of breaking glass echoed, and the window frame was torn apart. The dark figure from outside poured into the room, taller and more terrifying than Eleanor had imagined. Its eyes glowed red like hot coals, staring at the 3 of them with utter hatred. "Kids, get behind me," Eleanor shouted, gripping her walking stick tightly. She stood in front of her 2 grandsons, ready to face the evil thing that was approaching. The dark figure let out a chilling growl and lunged towards them. Eleanor raised her walking stick high, striking the dark figure with all her might. A piercing screech echoed, and the dark figure recoiled slightly. She knew she couldn't defeat it with force, but she would do anything to protect her grandchildren. Just then, the sound of police sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed through the night. The dark figure seemed to freeze, then slowly vanished into the shadows. The police burst into the house, finding Eleanor and her 2 grandsons huddled together, trembling. Later, it was discovered that the farmhouse had been the site of a horrific murder many years ago, and perhaps the vengeful spirit of the victim still haunted the place. Eleanor and her grandsons moved away, but the terrifying memory of the ghost behind the curtains remained a horrifying nightmare in their lives. If you found this story chilling and want to hear more true horror stories, please remember to subscribe to my channel to support me.